I'm now going to show you a very simple but very effective olive pattern, just a generic pattern that fish in different sizes will cover different hatches of olives, and obviously you can vary the shade of the olive according to the hatch and also the size. I'm going to start off, I'm using some partridge SLD hooks. These are actually, I'm demonstrating here on a size 14. You can fish them obviously down to whatever size you need to, or even bigger as need be. So this is a size 14. I'm going to use some Vivus 12-0 tying thread in black. Thread doesn't really matter that much on this pattern. Anyway, just going to introduce the thread to the hook. Just take it down towards the bend. And for the tail, one of my favourite tailing patterns on nymphs and dries is Coq de Leon. So you can see there. Again, you don't need too many of these. You can use, for example, a Cree or a Grizzle Coq fibre instead of Coq de Leon if you wanted to. So introduce a few fibres of the Coq de Leon up, just take it down, just hold the tail in place. When you get towards that bend, you see it's at the moment lying perfectly straight with the shank. I'm going to try and lift it a little bit, so I'm just going to take one turn underneath, pull that back a bit, and then just tighten up. You see that just lifts the tail, and that's perfect. No need to trim that, you can actually just wind it all the way down. For the body, I'm going to, again, as in the nymph, the jig nymph I was showing earlier, or in one of my other videos, I'm going to use some of the Transbright olive, again just material from Funky Fly Tying, and I think it's actually again designed for fishing blob patterns. This is in direct contrast to a blob pattern, I guess. Anyway, so I just need one fibre of that to introduce it up and just trap that on the hook and just draw it down a bit. You don't need that full length just protruding back there. Saves you having to cut it again. Just take it down to where the tail begins. Take your thread back up towards the eye of the hook. After you've secured the Transbright fibre, easiest thing to do, rather than ribbing or even messing around with any glues and stuff afterwards, just put some super glue on your thread base, and then as you wind your Transbright up, you've actually got a solid and very secure body underneath. Now with this Transbright, the more layers you actually build up, the darker the stuff gets. So it just depends on what you're trying to represent. You can actually make a slightly lighter thorax or lighter butt section. That's perfect. And you can see also I've just slightly tapered it to build it up towards the thorax, and just skewer off a couple of turns, double it back over, and then you can snip it and it's secure. Okay, so that's the tail and the body done. Happy with that. Again, these are pretty simple but very efficient patterns. They take very little time to tie. So the wing, I'm not going to hackle. I was going to use some CDC puffs. So when we introduce the CDC puff, I'm actually going to stick it pointing over the eye, and you're going to then invert it. So you're going to measure out roughly how high you want this to ride, and I would say is about perfect there. Just secure that in. Just take a couple of turns behind there, and then just hold both sections, so that the butt end of the feather and the front end. Just do that a couple of times. What we do, we actually utilise this butt section. A lot of useful fibres in there and it helps the fly float. I'm going to cut it off at an angle right down to the base, and that actually forms part of the wing. Again, all in one feather, so no need for multiple feathers. So all I'm going to do now is do some dubbing in the thorax. What I've done is I've taken some hare's fur, but it's a lot of the underfur rather than the spiky guard hair. You can use a few of those for sure because it actually acts as the legs, but actually you want that slightly softer underfur. And what I've done also, I've mixed in a bit of spectra in like a black or a peacock colour, just to add a little bit of flash to that thorax. I'm just going to dub that in, dub it in a fine rope. You can dub it pretty tightly as well. So all we do, take that up. Don't worry as you wind if you're going to trap down a few of the CDC feathers. That's fine. That's going to be enough just there. So if you just measure it out, you don't want too bulky a thorax. Just take that down. Pardon me. Take it towards the eye, just there. And that's perfect. Again, I don't bother whip finishing. That's all I do. Actually, I'm going to just take turn a thread off there. Just take your super glue, put some droplets of super glue onto the thread. Wipe everything back so you're not going to trap any super glue on the fibres. Then just take that around until all the super glue particles are on the head. Pull that tight and snip the thread in close. Now you can leave the fly like that and it's perfectly presentable as it is, but remember we put left some of the guard hairs and also some of that spectra in that dubbing in the thorax, so I'm going to just pull some of that out just to form some of the legs in the thorax. Again, just with a bit of Velcro. And that's it done.